Hi, welcome to a new episode of Sportsy Let's Aim Sports. Today we have with us Shayamal Vallabhjee, a South African sports scientist and a performance coach with 18 plus years of experience in high performance and sporting environment. The author of 4 books on sports science and motivation, a TEDx speaker, a recipient of IMK in Australia India Youth Dialogue Fellowship, Men's Health Trainer of the Year 2014, Global Fitness Advisory Board member to Herbalife and organizing committee member to the United Nations Changemaker Conference. 2 decades of on-field experience with Olympians as well as champions, winning teams, 3 years of living as a monk who taught him the art and the science of work-life balance. We must learn who to starve our fears and feed our courage in our quest to cultivate excellence. Shamal worked with athletes and executives to unlock their potential mentally, physically, and emotionally. He pushed his own physical and mental limits through ultra marathons running and mountaineering. He dreams that he can touch the lives of millions of children by making sports an equal opportunity platform, devoid of politics, religion, race, gender, and socioeconomic basis. Let's welcome Shamal Vallabhjee, who is with us to talk to us about how we can be ready to unlock the champion in us. Hi, Shamal. Great to have you on Sportsy. Let's Aim Sports, where we talk about sports as a platform for people to aspire, inspire, and motivate. And believe me, it is so fun to have you here from the whole mental aspect of it. The person who has worked with numerous athletes on the mental side to performance side to coaching side and himself being an athlete. It's a phenomenal journey and we just want to capture whatever we can in next say 30-35 minutes with you. So great to have you here, Shamal.
Thank you so much, Sid. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your show, and I look forward to peeling away the layers of whatever it is you want to deep dive into.
Yes, and believe me, those the questions I'm going to write come your way because everybody wants to not know about what is the peak performance is, what is the ultimate performance is, how do you train yourself, and our viewers are a lot of our athletes, a lot of kids, a lot of parents of the athlete who are kind of confused, as well as the sports management industry people. So it's not only, even though it's a sports channel, it's not only limited to sports. A lot of corporate people watch this because they get inspiration. They know how to. If you look at a para athlete, they get inspired by the story of those athletes. So this is, we have a good set of viewers for that, and I think it is something perfect for us to have somebody like you. Shaman, my first question with all these things that yes, first thing we started as came from South Africa and performance coaching. You yourself were an athlete. So how did you get attracted to sports while growing up in South Africa? We know it's a country or it's a place where the sports is in the blood, it's in the culture. But what you as an individual, how did you get attracted to the sports in South Africa?
Yeah, Sid, I grew up, like you said, sports in South Africa is a part and parcel of who you are. Whether you come from a village or whether you come from an affluent home, everyone is built around sports. You know, growing up, I even tell people, for a teenager, there's no clubbing culture. You don't go out partying. There's no drugs. You know, the culture is weekend. Everyone goes and watch sports. Everyone has a barbecue around a sporting event. Everyone watches events together. Entire families go out to watch your favorite teams perform. And that runs all the way down from state to national, even down to clubs. You know, you can have a club cricket game that could have anywhere from 500 to 2,500 people sitting there watching it live on a Sunday. And that's the sort of culture that I grew up in. So I grew up wanting to always be a cricketer and wanting to play cricket. But the time that I grew up in South Africa, it was the apartheid era. And the apartheid, for our listeners, is institutionalized segregation of people of color, which means people of color had limited opportunities with respect to education, facilities, and career paths, like, for example, sport. So that is what really inspired me to start the journey of sport. What inspired me to stay in the journey of sport was the fact that when I turned 18 and I realized that the doors were shut for a person like me, for a person of color, I was headstrong and adamant that I want to stay in this and do my part to eradicate discrimination from sport. Sport is, by every nature, a meritocracy, which means everyone starts at the same point. And when the gun goes off, the fastest, the strongest, the quickest, the most talented should win. And I didn't think that it was fair that layers of discrimination came in before the gun even went off. So my entire life, being more than 20 years now, has been dedicated to eradicating discrimination in sport across all platforms, which could be religious discrimination, caste discrimination, gender discrimination, socioeconomic discrimination, race discrimination. And that's what's motivated me to stay in it. I work on the performance side of sport. I work on the mind and the body. I help athletes do that. And people ask me, why do you still do that? And my motivating factor, my single most motivating factor is to be the best in the world in terms of peeling away the layers of peak performance, because the world only listens to the best. So I use my skill, I use my talent to stay right at the forefront of sport. And when I get a platform, I then use that platform to talk about the eradication of discrimination from sport, and sport being a free and fair opportunity for all.
Interesting. I think just believe me, Rick, what you said was so passionate, and we know that whatever we have read that 18, 19, when you actually chose not to go beyond because of the socio-economic issues which are there. But just as an athlete, knowing the issues, but do you think that do you have any regrets about giving up professional career that time?
No, I have no regrets about giving it up. If I put my hand on my heart and ask me, would I have had a career in professional cricket that would have lasted 10 years? The answer is no. I wouldn't. I wasn't that talented. I would not have lasted. Would I have been able to play state cricket for a year or two? The answer is yes. Would I have been able to push past and perhaps make one debut on the international men's game for a while? Of course, yes. But that's not the type of success I was aspiring for. I was aspiring for a decade of being right at the top. And the truth was, I wouldn't have been that person. Okay. Now, I could look at the apartheid as something that didn't give me an opportunity. But at the same time, I'm also grateful for the apartheid because it led me down a path where I could have sustained success for 2 decades. My greatest strength up to today is my ability to look at something rationally and laterally. My strongest asset is my mind. My ability to peel away the layers of something and look at something from multiple perspectives is my strongest asset. And that's what I bring to performance enhancement. It was discrimination that suppressed a skill I wanted, but I wasn't good at, to give a skill that I didn't want, but I was good at, a chance to flourish. And how can you hate a system if it did that? So I don't hate the apartheid. I'm eternally grateful for the apartheid, because the apartheid also did something else. If you were a person of color growing up in that system, you had to work 10 times harder than everyone else. Okay. And as a sportsman, you already are working exceptionally hard. But as a colored sportsman in an apartheid situation, you are working significantly harder. Now, you can complain about that, but what it did was it instilled in me a work ethic that is second to none. I am not afraid of hard work. I can sleep on a floor. I can travel to any country. I don't care about getting bankrupt. I don't care about what people tell me. I don't care about how I'm positioned. I don't care about how many times I fail. I have a work ethic that is second to none. And the apartheid instilled that work ethic in me. And that work ethic, I'm so confident in it that if you take every single thing that I have away from me today, right now, and you leave me with nothing but the clothes on my back, in under 5 years, I'd have more than I have today. That I'm absolutely guaranteed about.
Wow, that's it's not it's not only about confidence, about believing your ability, and I think that comes with the hard work and dedication that you have. And we're talking about the South Africa and the era in South Africa, and we always get in sports, we get to hear about the big statement which Nelson Mandela made about the sports has a power to change the world, it has the power to inspire, it has a power to unite people, and it actually understands, it has a language which youth understand. I think that is so good, and it is whatever you're talking about it. I think it just connects to those points, and your work, whatever I have known you as a person on your website, your podcast, and everywhere. We get to see that it's a passion at different level of making the change happen. So when So on those lines, when you actually decided to move away from being an athlete to make an impact with sports on multiple aspects, you basically you started focusing on sports science. And one thing is for sure that you couldn't get the sport out of you. How was that journey on a sports science field or sports science career beyond a playing athlete?
I mean, that journey was absolutely phenomenal because, you got to look inside the human body, and I'm talking 1997, 1998, when I started studying sports science. People didn't even know what sports science was,
Exactly.
So we're looking at the science of human performance, studying muscle, studying biology, studying nutrition, and the impact of it on sport. I was experimenting. People don't know this, nobody knows this. I was so passionate about sports science that in 1999, I was the high performance coach with the KwaZulu-Natal Dolphins. That's a state cricket team in KwaZulu-Natal. We had the likes of Sean Pollock, Dale Benkenstein was our captain. You had Pat Simcox, John T. Rhodes, all of these guys were there. At that stage, I was working with a company called Sunto. Sunto makes heart rate monitors. And they came out with the first team-based short-range heart rate monitoring system. Okay, which means that I could monitor the heart rate of my players in real time over a distance of 150 meters. So I had to strategically position receivers all over the ground to get that data. And in 1999, when people weren't even looking at anything else, I was checking how quickly bowlers were fatiguing between spells, all because I was trying to prevent that one over that went for 12 runs, because that was the pivotal point. So I was looking to myself, what is the one thing that we can do to shift an outcome of a game? And we looked at and we said, at least 10% of the games we lost in a season were lost by under 10 runs. And under 10 runs means one over. If you can shift the outcome of one over, okay, you could win those games.
Right.
And we looked at variable heart rate, and I found that bowlers were bowling the 5th or 6th over in a spell when they were fatigued, and that was the reason why they had poor accuracy, and that was what cost them.
Wow.
Okay, and we tracked that. And then I took that a step further. I used to use a software called Silicon Coach, which was a pure coaching software that captured video footage, and you could slow it down, and then we could do this. So back in 1999, I was recording games full time, superimposing them onto Silicon Coach and studying biomechanics. And then we took it a step further, where I got Silicon Coach and Sunto to speak to each other, and I integrated these two softwares. So whilst recording a game in real time, I was also getting real-time feedback on a person's variable heart rate. Now, that was unheard of back in 1999. No one was doing anything like that. And we didn't have the money and the resources, or the administrators didn't believe in that there. But that was really where I started getting phenomenally interested in how I could shift the outcome of a game using science. And remember, when people look at shifting outcomes, the first thing we talk about is performance enhancement drugs, right? So everyone looks at drugs at enhancing performance. And I was fascinated by how could I shift the outcome of a game within the confines or rules of that game. And that's what technology came in. Technology allowed us to shift the outcome within the confines of that game. So looking at things like recovery, I mean, we did a lot of things that were not fair, to be honest, but they didn't break any rules. For example, today when you look at a cricket game and you look at the people who are walking around the field that are giving drinks, you'll see all of them are using vests, all of them are using bibs, correct?
Yes.
Right. Nobody knows this, but where do you think bibs came into play? Bibs came into play back in South Africa in 1999, 2000, because what we started doing was we used to get in a high pressure situation. I used to get all the fielders in the change room who weren't playing to just carry a drink and walk all over the field. Because when a batter is in a high pressure situation and he scans the cricket field, he doesn't know who's inside the rope and who's outside the rope. Isn't it? So he couldn't identify the gaps as clearly as he could. So we didn't do anything wrong, but we modified and we broke the rules within the rules to get a performance enhancement game. And that was what actually brought in the bibs into the game of cricket. So, even the game of 2020 cricket evolved in South Africa, when we had the Discovery tournament where four teams came together in the day.
Right.
the Australians and the South Africans, when you look at the game of cricket, we were light years ahead of everyone else in terms of understanding science. I still think we are light years ahead of everyone else in terms of interpreting science. And that was how we brought it to the forefront. And that was why I still am madly in love with sports science. But now I spend a significant amount of time on the psychology aspect of it, because at the cutting edge of sport, physiologically, almost everyone's the same. The differentiator comes in psychology. And that's what now is my key area of focus.
Okay, interesting. Shamal, I think this is so fascinating. And I remember that the what you're talking about now, if I can start recollecting that, I think we see the players, and I think it was an amazing thing to understand why it was happening. Just one question around it. It's like the South Africa was always ahead of the curve when it came to science, of implementing science, and all those things happening. But at the same time, the thing that you're doing now is a mental conditioning of the player. Was that happening that time? Because for so many years, unfortunately, we always related South Africa cricket team with the unfortunate word C, and they were like choking at the last moment, and that is what the cricket team was going. Let's not get into the whole cricket side of it, but do you think it was more of a science and less of mental happening that time, where we saw the shift happening later?
Yeah, I mean, back in that day, I remember, after the 2003 World Cup, I started working with Gary Custon and Paddy Upton in the High Performance Cricket Union in Cape Town. And we had a team of about 20 scientists that were working on our players, and we were grooming talent. I mean, we had an emotional psychologist. His name was Dr. David Crombie, who used to come in. During the Cricket World Cup, when I worked with India, we had Dr. Sandy Gordon, who was our sports psychologist. So sports psychology was really at the forefront even back then. Mm-hmm. The problem was that the administrators didn't think it was important enough. So whilst you had a psychologist on your support staff, the head coaches at the time didn't think it was important enough. And why? I mean, right now, I used to spend time in Kings 11 Punjab as a mental coach. I hardly got any time to really do any work on the mental side. Why? Because the coaches in the current ecosystem themselves don't think sports psychology is important, or they may publicly say it is important, but they're not carving out time out of that training schedule to look at the mental health of players. So, and now we are 20 years down the line from when I'm talking about, and it's still not shifted. Yeah. The point is that, it is a massive impact on performance. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be looked at. The amount of anxiety and stress a professional cricketer goes through is, it cannot be discounted by any shape and form. And especially in a game like the IPL or a tournament like the IPL, there's such a phenomenal amount of pressure. It's a make or break tournament for most people's career. And how can one be naive enough to think that there isn't mental stress and anxiety around trying to operate in that ecosystem?
Correct. And it's probably just a topic that a couple of days back, I read in the paper about Sachin mentioning about 10, 12 years spending in anxiety. And at the person at his level and his stature also said that I used to have sleepless night before the games. And it just came in the paper. And just connecting the dots that you worked with Indian team in 2003 World Cup in South Africa, where it was a great run for Indian team. But do you think the final was a mental loss than an actual loss?
Absolutely, it was a mental loss. I remember in the morning of the final, I actually went down to breakfast at 5 a.m. and Sachin was sitting there. I remember having tea with him in the morning at 5 o'clock because he couldn't sleep the whole night. And he's right. It was nervous. And right next to him, 20 minutes later, Virender Sehwag was there, and then everyone was pacing around. And it was definitely a mental game. I think the pressure the Indian cricket team puts themselves to win against Pakistan is too much. And I think that when I look back at 2003 as a World Cup, that win is winning against Pakistan in a World Cup was such a release of pressure that they felt that we achieved something. So, sitting in there in the change room, I couldn't understand whether we celebrated more winning that win than actually getting into the final.
Wow.
And it puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Correct.
And where does that pressure come from? How does that pressure come? That pressure is societal. That pressure is a, a, a byproduct of what is put out there and how the athletes perceive it. And then you have to understand that these athletes are in the early 20s. No one in their early 20s is emotionally mature enough to distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, where their focus should be, especially when there's so much riding on the line.
Correct.
Okay. So it's true that, it was a mental game. We were happy to get there. We were overly happy when we beat Pakistan. We were exceptionally nervous when we got to the finals. Australia they were having a run of their life. I mean,
Yeah.
Adam Gilchrist, Ricky Ponting, Matty Hayden, you name it. I mean, what a team they had. Andrew Simons, it was phenomenal. Were we going in the underdogs? There's absolutely no doubt about it. We are going in the underdogs.
Right.
Yeah. And did we put too much pressure on ourselves? Absolutely, we put too much pressure on ourselves. But how does one deal with that is a phenomenal thing. And now, when South Africa, you mentioned South Africa going into a World Cup, every single South African player who walks into a World Cup game is carrying the residual stress going back 40 years. Every single player. Why? They know every single team is under pressure. They know everyone's going to use the word choker. They know we have to redo the mistakes that Alan Donald and Lance Armstrong made, Lance Klusener made in 1999 or whatever it is. We have the pressure of undoing that. That's far too much pressure for any athlete to carry,
Yeah.
And if you're not cognizant of the fact that someone is carrying that pressure, then you're obviously not going to be mindful enough of putting systems in place to help eradicate it.
Interesting. And on these, this is such amazing information for so many people who are watching it and listening to this. Uh, uh, it's about how do you handle the pressure and don't carry the baggages. Let's live for. A lot of people say live for today and give the importance to what you're doing right now rather than carrying the baggages. It's obviously easier said than done. But you have worked with so many elite athletes with India's Davis Cup, South Africa cricket team, India cricket team, Kings 11 Punjab, Mahesh Bhupati, Max Mirny. There's a long list of people that you have worked. But when all these things and last 20, 25 years of what you have been studying around it, what is your difference between a performance and a peak performance?
Peak performance is really pushing the upper limits of your potential. That's what peak performance is. But the secret is you want to have sustained peak performance. You don't want to go up and down like a yo-yo. You want to operate within 2 to 3% of your peak performance on a sustained, continuous manner. And that's a science. For someone who goes up and down, they need the external environment stress, they need motivation, they need coaches, they need perfect situations. For those who can sustain a certain level of competition in and out, week in, week out, month in, month, year in, year, that's called sustained peak performance. And that's the first prerequisite that we need to do. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the variability in performance and how can we create some level of stability and sustainability to that. And I break it up in a few ways. So I'm looking at, okay, what does peak performance look like? And how can I quantify these metrics or these variables? Let's take a fast bowler, for example. Let's say a fast bowler has the potential to bowl 150 kilometers an hour, right? And that's his top speed, right? Now I'm looking at his average bowling speed. Let's hypothetically say his average bowling speed is 144 kilometers an hour. Now I'm looking at the differential between 150 and 148. Don't have a calculator with me, but if we calculate what that differential is, and it's very simple, between them is between 2% and 4%, then I'm looking at biomechanics and I'm looking at technical. So technical could be your shoes, for example. Could we get lighter shoes on them? Could we get better equipment on them? Could we get better breathable clothing? Could we adjust biomechanics to close that gap? If the differential between top performance and average performance is less than 2%, then I'm going purely into psychological and trying to move them into flow states. So the first thing I'm trying to do is calculate the differential between peak performance and average performance and see what the gap that I need to close is. And everything then stems from there on how I approach it and things like that. And when you look at performance, for me, there's certain things that are non-negotiable, irrespective of the sport you're playing at, irrespective of the code of sport or position you're playing at. I'm expecting my athletes to maintain a body fat percentage of less than 12% minimum, right? I'm expecting them to at least leg press 2.5 times their body weight, bench press 1 times their body weight. I'm expecting the diet to be absolutely tip top. These are just non-negotiables. I'm expecting them to have the best equipment available to them. I'm expecting them to be training in the best environment and have people to push them. These are just low-hanging fruit. If you don't have this in place, we can't help you. And that's the fundamental problem that we have in India, is that if you're fighting to get an athlete a good plate of food, you are scratching so low on the barrel that it's not possible to create sustained peak performance for an entire decade. It's impossible, because you compete against people who have all of this, who have great technology. Now we have 92 high performance centers in the country, Sports Authority of India high performance centers. Those facilities are not up to scratch for professional athletes to train in. Okay.
Wow.
None of our professional athletes, barring IPL cricketers, are tracking any of their physiology on technology. So we're not looking at sleep markers, we're not looking at temperature markers, we're not looking at physiology and GPS markers at all. None of the coaches beyond perhaps your hockey team or your cricket team understand how to interpret sports science data. Okay. No one has access to continuous medical screenings. No one's doing continuous bone density tests to check lean muscle mass against bone density to predict injury. If you don't have all of this, how are you expected to sustain peak performance over a decade? It's impossible. And you're not going to be able to do this until you don't get the buy-in of administrators. And that's fundamentally where we are where we're pausing it.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting is about I didn't know what you spoke about the parameter between the average performance and peak performance, the percentage and all those things. I think it is something very important, and also some of the facts that you mentioned about the cricket team or hockey team having some access to it, but not everybody else. That itself is a situation, like a warning sign that we have to take actions. Otherwise, we'll just go to keep crying every 4 years that we don't get medals. I think that is the unfortunate part, and hopefully we overcome that. So Shamal, one question that I had, and a lot of kids watch my channel who I want to be athlete. They always say that we hit a wall against certain player or certain type of players, and we are not able to cross that person. So, or we go and win once or twice, but we are not able to sustain that kind of thing. So what exactly is the winning mindset is, or how do you actually break the barrier and overcome that a particular? I know a lot of efforts are required, a lot of technical things are required. There will be a process to it, but on the mental side, what is that winning mindset that people can develop, and is there any way that people can understand how to develop that?
In the world of sport, how I train an athlete mentally was I push them so hard physically, right, that when they walk into competition, no matter who they're facing, that person doesn't even hold a candle to what they've gone through in practice. Now, if you are hitting a mental block against a player, okay, then the only way is to build your competence, because competence drives confidence, which means the better you get at something, the more confident you are. The more confident you are, the more able you are to execute under high pressure situations. Okay. Now, competence means really pushing the envelope on every single aspect, mentally, physically, psychologically, whatever it is. You have to push the limit. The fundamental problem is, in India, we look at practicing our sport as working hard. We think we're batting for 5 hours, we've worked hard. I don't even count those 5 hours. I come from a school of thought where you need to spend 10 hours in the gym to earn the right to even pick up the bat.
Okay.
That is where you build your competence, because you are playing a sport you love. What is so hard about running with a football? What is so hard about playing cricket? You love it. It's fun. You're doing it with your friends, but you got to earn the right to do that. And you earn the right by eating well, by sleeping well, by training hard, by doing every single thing else. And if you operate in this system, then no matter who you face as a player, you'll overcome them. you know so that's the differentiator between South African sport that I grew up in and what I see in India. In India, I see so many people. I have cricketers who come and I coach them and they say, we practice 3 times a day. I said, who are you bluffing? Please go and gym 3 times a day. And when you can do that for a month, then come and pick up the bat. Because skill is the easiest thing to develop. It's grit, it's determination, it's mental toughness, it's pushing past that breaking point. And then I even tell athletes saying, we're in the gym 3 times a day. I'm saying, fantastic. Now put your shoes on and go for a run. How did I break my athletes? How did I break my athletes? When I trained them, I used to jump them in a car and I used to get somebody to drop us off 30 kilometers away from the ground. Now you got no money and you have to run back. You want to stop, you stop and you sit on the side of the road. No one's coming to pick you up. You understand? Wow. Yeah, that's what you do. That's how you have to find a way to break your mind, because when you break your mind, you'll be able to break and face anything that anyone throws at you.
Interesting. It's so fascinating to understand about this, about the breaking the mindset and go just crossing the barrier, crossing the mental barrier that you have. But in the whole process, Shamal, we live in the mix of urban and rural kind of thing, and everybody is driven by something different. So we have seen and we have heard so many stories of the elite athlete also getting complacent. So it has got an issue, and it creates a bigger issue for people who follow them or want to adapt to those kind of people. But as an athlete at any level that you are in, how not to get complacent, and also how do you actually build a mindset which is around aspirational, inspirational, motivational, which is going to help you as an athlete?
Yeah, my athletes, at least those that get complacent, they're not getting complacent in the first month or first year. They're getting complacent after 15 years. So whoever's looking at them and saying they're complacent, please have a look at where they are in their life. They pushed for 15 years before they turned pro, and then they pushed for 15 years after they turned pro before complacency set in. And if you are comparing them to your level of complacency after 2 months of just starting your training, then you got to look in the mirror. Yeah. Because you got to understand that the level at which a professional athlete is operating at is not sustainable for the rest of his life. That's why his career ends after 15 years. That's why it stops at 30 to 35. It's impossible to push the body that hard. It's impossible to be that disciplined in your nutrition, in your sleeping, in your tracking, in your travel. It's not possible to put every other agenda aside, for the rest of your life. I missed my brother's wedding. I missed every single family function from the time I was 16 to the time I was 30. Not a single Diwali, not a single family function was I ever there. You understand? So yes, if you see me partying on Christmas now when I'm 40 and you look at it, he's getting complacent, I should do that. You should look at what I've done for the previous 20 years first.
Correct.
Exactly. So compare apples with apples. Okay, you want to compare yourself to that professional athlete, but compare yourself to when he was at that stage in your life and look at what he was doing.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think it's a very rightful thought that you put in mind. It's about how do you look at, and because we are born in the era, or we are born judgmentals. We want to judge people on whatever actions that we are. It's like we will find a flaw in Prithvi Shaw because of his the way he acts, or what we are seeing from the Kamli days, like Sachin and Kamli and everywhere, right? We have always thought about comparing and being judgmental about those, but it's all about how you look at that situation. So. So I have again on one more question on the same line, that you have so much experience behind you about the whole mental side of it. Yes, you started with science, but we came to the mental side of it. What how do you implement the mental conditioning, e- even if not you're pro athlete? How do you maintain that as a regular corporate life or any kind of life? Because you do work with a lot of corporate business heads at coaching them. So how does that work in the current situation when we are living in the bubble, or we are in the green channel where bubble to bubble we are traveling? We don't know what, a lot of uncertainties around us. So what are those things that you actually talk to those people with?
So if you want to perform at your peak, irrespective of what field you're in, the first thing you need to do is create mind space or mental space. You need to understand how to still the mind, because when you still the mind, you're able to process stress and your options to stress a lot clearer. A stressed brain cannot think clearly. So the first thing that anyone needs to do is understand how to still their mind through maybe practices like breath work or mindfulness or meditation. Stilling the mind is vitally, vitally important. The second thing that you need to do to perform under stress is you need to do all your research. You need to study, you need to read, you need to listen to podcasts. I spend on average 4 hours a day just studying, just listening to podcasts, just reading books, doing that. Why? Because when you're in a high pressure situation, you're going to draw on information that you have, either experience, either knowledge, or whatever it is. And when BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, kicks in during activity, brain derived neurotrophic factor will merge certain neurons together, which means
Mhm.
you'll come up with novel ways to get out of a situation. But that can only happen is if you have information available at your disposal. So still the mind. The second is study. There's no getting away from that. And the third thing you really need to do is you need to have discipline in execution. Okay. You need to have a level of mastery over a certain component of your skill.
Mhm.
Okay. When you have mastery over a skill, the skill moves from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind. Okay. I keep telling cricketers, you know, everyone, Shane Warne did an amazing thing for fast bowlers, for spinners, leg spinners. He also did a terrible thing for leg spinners, because after leg spinners, what Shane Warne bowl, every single leg spinner on the planet thought I need to have at least 10 different variations to bowl. Okay. When the truth is, all you needed to do was execute one ball 100% perfectly. You needed to land, if you landed the exact same ball in the exact same place every single time, you would be good enough to play for 10 years. Right. So that's the fundamental thing that people forget. It's not about your variety. It's about your ability to execute a single skill with perfect mastery. And that's the third thing that you need. So you need knowledge, you need mastery, and you need mindfulness.
Wow. And I think that's a complete a package that people can look at, irrespective of field, as you mentioned, because it's everywhere right now. That you have to look at any field that nothing to do with sports. It's about every field. So just a last question, Shamal, I have, or sorry, rather, second last question I have. One is little fun part, and one is little normal part. Is about, you have worked with so many athletes. What are those traits that you come across which are really baffle you, that these are the biggest of the guys, and how can they still be like this? So are those any things that really baffle you?
Yeah, some of them are super distractive off the field. You can't even have a conversation with them for 1 minute. It's incredible how they could be such geniuses, but you can't hold their awareness on any one thing for longer than 1 minute when they're not playing a sport. It's amazing. I'm intrigued by that every single day, you know. Uh, and that's really one of the most remarkable things. And I think the reason why they're like that is because they're so hyper switched on when they're on the field
Mhm.
that they completely switched off the field, you know. uh and that's the thing that really sort of baffles me about them. Everything else is really and truly a byproduct of work, a byproduct of personality.
Mhm.
uh it's also really amazing how every sportsman at every single level, you know, whilst he's playing, seems to think that this is going to go on forever,
Yeah.
when there's absolutely no track record of anyone ever going on forever. So no one that I've ever spoken to has even considered anything else whilst they were playing sport. And they only start thinking about it after their careers literally hit the ground. And that baffles me, because you've seen everyone struggle after the careers ended. You've seen everyone not have enough money from a sustained long career.
Right.
Yet it baffles me how you cannot understand how I should use my influence whilst I'm playing to build an alternate passive income stream. If yeah, I mean, I keep saying that to myself. If I took my knowledge and went back 20 years, I would be in a completely different place today, because I'll just use my network a lot better, thinking that, knowing full well that this will have to come to an end at some stage.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So interesting. And that was just wanted to know, and because we always see that there are those crazy athletes in every field. Like we talk about yes, De Villiers, like Mr. 360, right? He is like one of the greatest guy that India loves. More probably loved more than a lot of Indian players as well. The way he is, but the mental skill, he has probably played every possible game at the best possible way. But we have he is also very sincere in the regular life, but not everybody is like that. They are just probably a masterclass that they come out of sometime.
Yeah.
My last question to you, Shamal, is uh, your dream is to work touch the lives of so many kids and actually give them a right platform which is not controlled by any discrimination, socioeconomic, and all those things. And sports, making sports as a vehicle for change, that is what you want to do. And so what is that message that you would like to give to those budding athletes or the kids who are just want to play and want to get a platform to express themselves? At the same time, parents who are getting confused about what to do, how to strike a balance between their playing career or the education, all those things. What is the last message that you would like to end our show on, chat on?
Yeah, it's tough for parents, it's tough for athletes as well. The first thing is, um, be disciplined in your training, and ask yourself, am I doing everything I possibly can over and above playing the sport to give myself the best chance of success? That's the first question I would ask the athletes to ask, which means, am I training? Am I getting access to a gym? Am I finding a way to do it besides play? Okay. The second is, how tough am I being on myself with respect to being disciplined in my sport?
Right.
That's very, very important. And then I think the most important thing is, maybe when you're 14, 15, doesn't really matter, but as you get up to about 18, 19, and you're deciding to pursue a professional career in sport, be very honest with yourself. It's not hard to see what your chances of success are. It's really not hard. I'm not asking you to look at the whole world. I'm asking you to just look in your community. If you're the best in your community, amazing. If you're the best in your state, amazing. If you're the best in your country, amazing. Being the best in India at something also doesn't guarantee that you could put bread on the table.
Correct.
So you'd have to be really, really honest with yourself on where you sit, because every day you deprive yourself of the truth is a day you deprive yourself of a good life in some other aspect. And it's very tough for coaches to step up and actually tell you when you should take a break or not.
Mm-hmm.
But you can know when you should give it up, and you can know if you're working hard enough to do it. If someone's working harder than you, then pack your bags immediately.
Wow. And yes, easier said than done, but straight. It's a very straight and simple message for people to understand where you are, understand what you are. And I think the everything that we spoke for last 30, 35 minutes all about having a discipline, having a mindfulness towards what you do, and just respect what you get every day and earn basically earn those things which you really want to cherish in your life. I think it's amazing listening to you, Shamal. It is, I know that I can pick your brain for hours together, but yeah, this is the format. This is short thing. Probably I wish I hope I get to host you some other time again with a more
Yes.
focused, a different topic. But for now, it is wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that you sure shared with us. It was fun. It was honest and straight from the heart. Thank you, Shamal, and look forward to talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Sid. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and thank you for sharing. But please do subscribe on our channel Sportsy Says and help us spread the word about Sportsy. We go with the same handle Sportsy Says across all social media platforms.